Let me spare you all the superfluous details and jump right in. Squidward's suicide, otherwise known by the name of Red Mist Online, is real to an extent. Let's just say that although the story you're all familiar with is loosely based in reality, so many of its more gruesome plot devices are initially hyperbolic. The story is littered with grammatical errors, narrative inconsistencies, contrivances, and sprinkled with reference to violence against children that are in poor taste. To say the least, each of these flaws, however, has been deliberately inserted to that ridiculous story for a specific purpose. To clarify what I mean, I would like to ask you to place yourself in Nickelodeon's shoes. As a large corporation with a reputation to uphold, let's construct a hypothetical scenario in which one or more of your former employees, has expressed the capability and desire to tamper the tape recordings of SpongeBob SquarePants episodes. Despite having your suspicions about which former employees in particular are the perpetrators, you don't have solid evidence to prove their identities in the court of law. All you have is reasonable motivations, as well as poor circumstantial evidence. All ensuing legal investigations that are eventually arrived at a dead end. You know for sure that the suspects that can animate episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants in a way that highly resembles the official episodes. Although there are slight discrepancies in the style and quality of animation, SpongeBob episodes, as with all of animated media, are typically produced by a large team of animators rather than a few people working independently of any large studio. The resemblance is clear. It would be bad publicity that if these episodes were to even air, even if they were broadcast locally rather than from the Nickelodeon channel. So you are forced to act. Although conspiracy theorists might imagine that the shady corporate practices that could make the suspects disappear would be a viable solution, there's a preferable alternative, that being to reduce these potentially broadcasted tapes into the absurdity before they could do any damage in the first place. Meeting this end is especially important as whispers of rare and disturbing episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants have already begun. Although you can use your influence to try and snuff these whispers out. Doing so for years on end would be far too tedious of a task. Eventually, rumors would slip through the crevices of your iron fist and would all go down from there. Enter Creepypasta, an online phenomenon spreading like wildfire across the web during the twilight of the 2010s. These dark and horrifying tales were circulated by fans of the horror genre across various message boards and forums with the expressive purpose of startling and disturbing whoever was unfortunate enough to stumble across these quote-unquote creepy copypastas. With the sudden boom of creepypastas' popularity came an opportunity. If you are able to incorporate terrifying accounts of SpongeBob SquarePants episodes into the ever-expanding creepypasta genre, you severed their association with Nickelodeon, should they ever air. If so, you get to work writing the most cliché internet urban legend you can devise of blood, guts, dead children, all the tropes you can imagine. You even begin with a few tropes of your own that need not to be mentioned here. Once you've finished, you proudly submit your work onto the internet. Pulling a few strings, you witnessed your creation rise to prominence joining the elite few creepypasta icons that had garnered the attention of millions. As tens of thousands of fan images, amateur videos purporting to contain the real contents of Squidward's suicide, and the YouTube videos discussing the topic of the story come to be, they drown out whatever their few forums, posts, and blogs were asking questions about those eerie episodes of SpongeBob. Your story's success has been exceeded your expectations, as it inspires many spin-offs. Now, any urban legend search for creepy content related to SpongeBob automatically brings you to Google page after Google page of topics unrelated to that of the real Red Mist tapes. Now, notice how the word tapes is pluralized. Squidward's suicide is not Red Mist. Rather, Red Mist refers to several untraceable notes and tapes, the contents of which conspiracy ended with it up in the hands of Nickelodeon studio staff members. They were given this name because of the fact that the words Red Mist has been written into the back of each note or tape that was received. The inciting incident, which sparkled Red Mist, occurred during the following release of the original SpongeBob SquarePants movie. As many of you may know, Steven Hillenburg wanted this series to end following the movie, as he felt that 3 seasons had been enough of a run for this show. This request was denied, however. Nickelodeon saw that the profit to be had in the franchise, and to them, that was all that mattered. This frustrated Hillenburg, causing him to leave the show altogether, along with several of the show's original writers and animators. Readers might recall that the original Squidward suicide creepypasta made the odd decision to include Hillenburg in the story, as if he were still working at Nickelodeon Studios. To some, this could be considered an unconscious mistake. To others, it could be viewed as another attempt to delegitimize stories revolving around lost SpongeBob media by including blatantly false information in them. Let's contextualize the departure of these former Nickelodeon studio employees as if it was a common knowledge today. Writers, and especially animators, in particular, are not always treated well by the company who they work for. It is often the case that strict deadlines will be set for them as that they must conform to. This can be especially stressful when it takes place in the realm of the episodic shows. Oftentimes, this leaves the workers of an animated television studio in catch-22 of sorts. Either they could fail to meet their deadlines, often at the expense of their job security or wages, or that they can rush their work, resulting in a sloppy episode that the employees can't be proud of. The writers of the animators for a large studio aren't just working for out of hobbyism. These people have dedicated their lives to their crafts, spending years honing their skills so that one day they may be offering the chance to work on a project that will be standing out to their portfolio. Unlike Nickelodeon studio executives, they aren't just in for the money. They have a genuine love for what they do. Imagine being in their position, enduring the stress and abuse they have gone through, and then having the vision that they shared with the creator in the project they worked on rejected. Imagine the frustration they must have felt as they chose to leave their studio as they once considered to be their big break. Imagine the sheer resentment they held inside of them, then realized that the anger that had been magnified dozens of times as they echoed each other's agitations amongst one another. The first of Red Mist tapes arrived just days after the inciting incident. This would initiate the pattern of that would be consistently displayed in these tapes. For most part, they displayed the normal SpongeBob SquarePants episodes. Then, often in the middle of a section of the program, a custom animation would be spliced into the episode. The first tape was labeled Red Mist, started off fairly mundane prior to the animation splicing. It was only upon reaching the middle of the episode that the screen flickered and the animation quality somewhat decreased. The screen depicted Sandy's helmet cracking before her suit was promptly filled to the brim with water. Her skin turned purple and blue as she struggled to breathe for an absurdly long period of time before she finally passed out and collapsed to the ground, dead. Word of this episode spread around the office quickly. It was received fairly well among the other employees and producers, who seemed to take it as a joke. This was to be somewhat expected. It wasn't uncommon for the animators or artists to create a darker version of their usual works to have fun. They simply reminded everyone to make sure that their side projects didn't distract them to their work. The first Red Mist note came in not long after that incident. It read to cease production and nothing more. The second Red Mist note arrived a week following the first one. The words, "Do you want us to show the world?" had been inscribed in the paper. Several weeks passed before the second Red Mist tape had been sent into the office. Once more, the middle section of the episode had been cut out and replaced with the original animation. It showcased Patrick Star extending his stomach out from his mouth, consuming SpongeBob as he was digested alive from the outside in. SpongeBob stared in the camera in silence. The lighting faded away, leaving only a pitch-black screen as the sounds of dripping and bubbling liquids could be heard. This tape specifically angered producers. They abusively demanded the animators to resume their work and stop wasting time. The animators had begun showing signs of irritability as they were degraded and banned by the higher-ups. The third Red Mist note rolled in the following: "You can't keep avoiding us." The producers decided to stop allowing chatter about the notes and tapes to continue around the office. They reasoned that if they didn't give up whichever mischievous employees were responsible for the events that were occurring any attention, they would get bored and stop. This obviously did not work. The fourth Red Mist note contained the words "broadcasting soon" and nothing more. This time it was accompanied by the third Red Mist tape. This tape was different from the rest. The entirety of the episode featured the main casts and the several background characters having been snagged through the jaw by fish hooks, which frequented the show. Their eyes had been rolled upwards and they dedicatedly swung back and forth. Through the tape was dead silent for the first half of the episode. The faint sound of ocean waves could be heard during the latter half. Although the contents of the tapes and the notes were not officially disclosed to the animators, that information still made its rounds among the workers. It seemed as if a few people at the top felt obliged to leak such things. The producers hadn't fully considered that those who remained at the studio at the entirely loyal to them. Still, it appeared that the message was finally getting through. There were people out there who were displeased with the directions of Nickelodeon that was heading with the SpongeBob franchise, and that they were tormenting the studio into submission. The cursive nature of the notes and the tapes had begun to sink into the consciousness of the higher-ups. They understood the threat of having such uncomfortable content associated with their brand released to the public. We could all see the worry in their faces as each day passed through the thought of having to explain this all the public if the tapes were spreading among the masses filled them with dread. Their anxiety grew exponentially as the realization set in that things could get worse if former employees of the show endorsed the episodes. Finally, the next tape came in. I was one of the few to have seen the Squidward suicide episode, and I could confirm that everything written about it in the original story only had two elements that are true. One, that Squidward did in fact sit on his bed holding a gun inside of his mouth. Two, a voice did speak in the background. At first, the voice only produced in faint, uncoherent murmurs. As the tape continued, however, it picked up in the intensity and pace. The voice spoke quickly, shouting the same phrase on the loop. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it. Upon the fifth repetition of the voice, a large blast could be heard and the sound of the gunfire erupted from the speakers. Squidward's head caved in as the bullets entered his skull, spraying his brain matter all over the wall in the background. The camera proceeded to zoom into his lifeless corpse as the sound of the ocean waves played over so softly. The voice had ceased, and mere moments later the episode ended. That sent the producers into a frenzy. They proceeded to question those who were in the immediate vicinity, attempting to figure out who had been responsible for those tapes having been delivered to the higher-ups. It was obvious to them that they were people on the inside cooperating with the ones on the outside. After all, it wasn't like the prior disgraced writers and the animators had waltzed on in and handed the tapes and the notes off themselves. It was clear that they had eyes and ears within the studio. They briefly questioned me, but soon realized that I was unlikely to have involved. After all, my position in the company didn't entail that I had the ability to create such episodes. Hell, I lacked the authority to even view the Squidward suicide episode in the producer's room. Before I could even catch a glimpse of the film, I had been promptly kicked out of the area. During my interrogation, they asked me why I was in the room to begin with. I told them that I had gotten lost traversing the corridors of the office and had accidentally stumbled into the wrong place at the wrong time. It was a reasonable explanation. It was an explanation they accepted. I was a new guy after all. I was left in a state of dismay following the incident. It was unfortunate that I couldn't view the episode with them. Oh, how I would love to see the shocked expression on their smug faces. Since I first witnessed how the episode played out, I was ecstatic to imagine how those assholes would react to it. The animators would really outdone themselves. Despite my disappointment, it wasn't all a let down. After all, I found it that interesting that they gave me such a major role in their fictional account of their episode. Once again, it was a completely unrealistic detail for me, and to have been a prominent character in it. It was probably another way to discredit the legitimacy of lost SpongeBob media stories by making them seem utterly ridiculous and unbelievable. Ah well, it is what it is. You can't keep avoiding us. We'll find a way to broadcast it some way, somehow. Ears and eyes. We're everywhere. Regards, a former intern at Nickelodeon Studios.